My name is Kirk Evans. I'm an architect with Microsoft. I've been with Microsoft for about 11 years. I work in our Azure Center of Excellence, helping our largest and most strategic customers that are taking a big bet on Azure. So I've run the gambit of IT pro and technology sessions. I'm pretty much a developer at heart. I love this session because this is all developer. You're going to love this. So is everybody in here a developer? Yeah? Oh, good. I love to see everybody's hands pretty much go up. That's good. Okay. So our agenda is very aggressive. It is packed with demos. You are not going to be left wanting for demos. You're going to see how to use lots of great stuff. So with that, let's just dive in. What is the API economy? Why did I even choose that name for this session instead of deep dive into web API? Well, if I said deep dive into web API, then I start showing API and logic apps, somebody would have been upset at that abstract. API economy is actually an appropriate term because it talks about the fact that in the past decade, APIs have gone from this relative obscurity. There wasn't many public APIs, and when there were, nobody really consumed them, certainly didn't take a critical dependency on them, but that's drastically changed, especially over the past few years. Byron Dieter, he's an investor that has invested in multiple API companies, and he has this quote where he points out that this concept of business to developer is one of the biggest markets that's available in the cloud and is projected with a couple $1 billion growth over the next few years. This is a huge opportunity for developers. So it's not just about consuming APIs. My bet is that since so many people raise their hand as developers, you probably went to Andrew's AC's session. You saw about the REST API, how to consume that with Breeze. You saw some neat stuff. I'm going on the other side of the fence. I'm going to make fun of the SharePoint APIs a little bit, why they're so terrible, and then we're going to go in and see some proposals on how you could fix them. So we're going to talk about that. So the API economy, when I said that the number of APIs has drastically increased, we're not kidding. Because if you look at this graph, this is only since 2005. In internet years, this is ridiculous because somewhere around June 11 to January 12, something interesting happens. We see this elbow effect, this drastic exponential increase of number of APIs that are out and available and cataloged and known about. These are just the public ones. These are not even the ones behind your firewalls. You probably have a bunch of APIs running around inside your organizations. And if you think about what drove this elbow here, it was around, I don't know, was it 2009, somewhere around there, when Steve Jobs announced three things: a phone, a personal device, and a music player, and it all ended up being the iPhone. Right? When he announced the iPhone, suddenly everybody's like, we're going to build apps. Number of apps took off. Well, if you have an app, you probably have something that it calls remotely, an API. It doesn't take long to realize, I want this app on Android as well. It's making me money here. I want to make money both. I can use the same API. Well, if I haven't, bless you, there's nothing to sneeze at. This is important stuff. Did AC already use that joke? Y'all didn't laugh at that one. All right, I stole it from him. So it doesn't take long to figure out that I build the API once and it's available to all these different targets. And then companies started realizing how valuable this is. So I can actually use this to provide value to my business. As I'm building this API, though, I have to determine, am I going to make it public or private? Am I going to make this available for public consumption, something like Twitter or Facebook, or private behind the firewall, or something through a paid subscription model, something on a more personal basis like Azure? So when you use an Azure subscription, you're using a private set of private APIs for just your tenancy. Office 365 APIs, I would consider private because they only work within your tenancy. Nobody else can call those APIs unless you give them access into your Active Directory, right? And if we're determining public or private, we also have to determine what good is this to the business. Are we looking to make money, or are we looking to indirectly influence our sales? Let's talk about that one for a moment. So let's look at the public side of things. Easy one for me is public and direct monetization. That's an easy one. There are actually companies, this is all they do. SendGrid, Twilio, there's a number of different companies that all they really do is have these public APIs where you purchase to be able to use these valued services. Reduces your cost, reduces your infrastructure, faster time to market for you, for them. This is what they do. Instead of selling product, They sell APIs. And then this other harder one to picture, public and indirect. Why would you do this? Great case in point, British Airways. They recently did this. They realized that they had a little bit of a perception problem, and they were having a problem gaining mind share. So what they did was created an API that shows number of on-time flights and what's their schedules, and made that publicly available. They're not charging for that, but what they're hoping is developers will incorporate that data somehow into their apps. As developers start to encounter that data, or as end users of those apps start to encounter that data, they start seeing the British Airways more and more and more, which is indirectly going to influence their likelihood to purchase tickets in the future. So that's what we talk about, public and indirect monetization. On the private side, this one's also fairly interesting to note. If we do private where you pay for, that's something where you have a paid subscription. Again, I call back to something like Azure. Or on the indirect monetization, something like private and Office 365. So Office 365, by having those APIs, doesn't directly make money, but it drives apps that build business value for the platform, which then in turn, Microsoft ends up making money because everybody sees it as such a valuable platform. And I hope, since everybody's here at a SharePoint conference, we can all agree that Office 365 is a valuable platform. If not, then we need to rename the conference. So a lot of this, again, was driven by the three things that Steve Jobs said. The mobile growth has been absolutely mind-blowing. And a lot of SharePoint devs, as I go around and talk to SharePoint developers specifically, I know a lot of SharePoint devs have been still kind of in the SP timer and SP web application and down in the guts of full trust code and struggling to break out. How can I learn all this influx of great new technology, and how do I keep up? One of the biggest trends that I think has passed by a lot of the SharePoint developers is mobile. And the reason why is because we have a job to do. We write SharePoint code, and we don't necessarily get out into all the other different things and see the influence around the platform. So mobile has been actually the biggest driver of many trends that you're seeing. The fact that I'm talking about REST APIs, that AC was talking about Breeze and client-side APIs and being able to access that using OAuth and remote APIs, because you can easily shrink that with responsive URIs down to a smaller form factor. So there's lots of capabilities to be able to use these, but it's all kind of driven by mobile. Mobile has the fastest growth, 10 times faster than PC boom, 2 times faster than internet boom, 3 times faster than the recent social explosion. And the benefit, again, is that the fact that we can scale everything, not just to an Android or iPhone device or hopefully even Windows tablet or device, but also up to a television. You know, televisions now, I turn it on and I can see add-ins for things like Netflix and Amazon, all kinds of stuff, all the way down to Raspberry Pi 2 devices that can have very small form factors that can still call the same API. So lots of form factors, one device. And you're starting to see that of all the names that you interact with on a daily basis, not only as a developer, but also a consumer. Best Buy, Walmart, eBay, there's lots of different companies that have these APIs that are available because they see the business value, that they say if we can get developers to build apps that incorporate our data, it makes it more tangible or easier for consumers than to consume our products and services. We're done with the background. The rest of this, we're gonna start flying through some demos. Y'all ready for this? Yeah? All right. I need more enthusiastic. Yes, come on. There you go. Wake it up. All right. Basic design tenets of an API. Why do I like to make fun of the SharePoint API? Well, it's because of this. Simplicity and affordance. Simplicity is really about just, can I look at it and understand it really quickly? And affordance says, can I use it without reading the documentation? Yeah, all right, so I got some snickers here. I'm seeing some smiles. You all know the ones that I'm talking about. It's not the _API/web. Everybody gets that one. You learn that one. You're like, okay, I'm good. I can get the properties of a web. What if you need to get a list? Anybody tried this one? Get a list by its ID or get a list by its title? Ooh, broken. So now we go into these weird named objects where get by title, get by ID. And it takes the old SharePoint full trust code model and exposes it down in a REST API and makes you feel all gross inside. So the idea is that what you should do, and I know this is tiny font, so I'll kind of read it out really quickly, is you need to keep your API design simple and intuitive, and developers should not require documentation to use your APIs. Limit the number of base URLs per resource. Don't throw everything into the kitchen sink under the lists API like we did. You know how they did the RESTful API for SharePoint, by the way? If you ever said, it looks a lot like the Full Trust API, yeah, because that's really what they did. They created something that would take all the calls in and would do a quick transformation and mapping to the backend actual Full Trust code API. There was no really thoughtful design of this thing. It was just really just toss it over well, ship it, and put the problem on you guys. So not a fan. All right, so all the things that I just said you should not do are called out here. You should never have a method in there called get all employees, get first employee, or get an employee called supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. So your first web API, this is the right way to do it. Create an entity, a resource, employees. Have CRUD operations there. We have employees, and I kind of call out, and I'm going to leave these as resource slides for you, but if I do an HTTP get to /employees, I should get all employees, or I should be throttled at some point. If I do get employees / some number, I should get just that employee. It's that easy. If I do list, I should be able to say get all lists. If I say list with one ID, I should just get that. I shouldn't have to dance around some weird API mapping thing. It's not my problem. Fix it, Redmond. So I have some more examples here of CRUD operations. You should use the HTTP verbs for what they do. Embrace the fact that it is HTTP. Use the verbs for what they're designed for. There's HTTP get, post, put, delete. Now, quick show of hands, or if anybody can call out. Does anybody know off the top of their heads all of the HTTP verbs? We can all get, put, post, delete, right? We got those 4. Any others? Okay. Oh, passed it too fast. Get, head, post, put, delete, connect, options, trace, patch is not shown, deprecated. So given all of these, get, head, post, put, delete, connect is usually used for SSL tunneling. If you open up Fiddler and you start seeing lots of 200 connects, you can actually filter those out because it's usually just saying here's SSL stuff you can't really get. Options is when you send an HTTP request. This is typically used for CORS, cross-origin resource sharing, where I can do a head request or options request. It'll come back and let me know if CORS is supported or not. And trace, usually they tell you leave this off by default, special purpose. I would do something like trace from some remote service, and it could tell me exactly what's happening behind the scenes. IAS leaves this off by default. SharePoint leaves this off by default. We typically just say, just leave it off, forget this one. Get, head, put, post, delete are the most common ones. Now, to scare you a little bit more, the things you're supposed to return when you have a web API. It's not just 200 OK or the scariest one, 500 internal server error, or more likely is 404 not found. Right? There's more than, and 302 redirect. So there's more than just those few. There's forbidden, not found, method, not allowed, not acceptable. So let's take a look at some of these. Look at how simple it is to determine which one of those codes you are supposed to do. Yeah, that's an eye chart. It's there to scare you. Let's zoom in and laugh at it for just a moment, shall we? I bet you're not seeing it. Let me go in a little bit closer. Look at how convoluted this is. Thankfully, you really don't have to know much of this. With the Web API framework in ASP.NET, you don't really have to know this. It does a lot of this for you. So let's tinker around with Web API for just a few moments. And along the way, I'm going to show you something brand new. So we're going to say File, New, Project. And I'm going to go down here to Web and choose ASP.NET Web Application. And let's call this my Evo Demo Awesome. There we go. And say OK. And now whenever I created that, oh, my favorite tool, there it is, Zoom it. I love this tool. There are a couple of different things you could choose from. There's web forms, ASP.NET MVC, a single page application, or a web API project, or if you go to azure.com and download the latest Azure SDK, it's version 2.5.1, I think is the latest version, and you're running Visual Studio 2013, yeah, so it has to be the latest Azure SDK, Visual Studio 2013, that's the magic combination to get, ta-da, Azure API app. These two actually do almost exactly the same thing. The new API app, though, adds some goodness on top that I'm just going to demonstrate. So I'm going to cut out two different demos, combine them into one. I'm just going to use the API app demo. That'll show you exactly how the web API template works, but we'll go a little bit further with it and show you how this works. So API app, and we'll say OK. And that's going to create a project for me in Visual Studio, and that's going to, again, create the same web API structure that I would have had before. So I go into global ASAX. I can see that it has that, wrong one, global ASAX, try that again. I can see that in system web HTTP application, there's application start method, that we have global configuration, configure, and there's my web API config register. Right click, say go to definition, and there's my web API config. That is found up here in the app start folder. I scroll down and I can see that that's where I map my routes. I can see that it maps a route that starts with API, the name of a controller, and then an optional ID parameter. I can see the ID is optional right here. So it's actually fairly easy to read. And so there's the name of the controller. It says whatever the controller name is. So let's scroll in and see it even generates a default controller for you called values controller. And just like I said before, simplicity and affordance, there's a method to get all values. Get/API/values gets you all of the values. Get a single value gets one value by its ID. An HTTP post, put, and delete. So F5. Let's just run this guy. And come on, show it to me. Oh! Actually, that's on purpose. I did that. All it's really saying is you can't list the directory contents, but the reason I did this is because, remember, I mapped the attribute route, which was /API/name of a controller. That's what we have to put in to get to our API. So we're going to go back here and do API/values, and we're going to get prompted for a download. And it's saying, do you want to download values.json? No, I don't. I want to use a tool that can help me do this demo a little bit better called Fiddler. Hopefully everybody is familiar with Fiddler, one of my favorite tools in the world. And it has this great tab here called Composer. So on Composer, what it allows me to do is go in and issue HTTP requests. And I can go to that API/values controller and to execute, and then inspect to see what just happened. And I can see in the raw return down here, there's value 1, value 2. Let's go set a breakpoint real quick. In case you didn't believe me, I went kind of fast. Let's do it again. This time I'm going to go to Composer, and let's just put in a number, /1, execute. And we hit our breakpoint. Ta-da! Look, it's that easy. All right, go in. The ID is actually, oh, you couldn't see it, but it's kind of right there hidden. It's 1. So it actually showed the value there. So hit F5 and we run. So creating your first API is really ridiculously simple. But you know what? I'm not actually persisting data. I'm not doing anything. So let me show you how cool this is. It astounds me when I do this demo how many people are just blown back by this and don't know that this is in Visual Studio. You're going to love this trick. This is worth the price of admission. So I'm going to right click, add a new ADO.NET entity data model. And what this guy is going to do is let me generate an entity framework. ADV works model can be a good name for it. We'll say OK. And I'm going to generate from a database. Say OK, next. And it's going to come up and say, which one are you trying to get to? I'm going to say no. I want a new connection here, and it's called advworks dot. Oh, I can't ever remember this off the top of my head. Let's zoom over a little bit. It's called advworks database windows.net. That's it. Add. You get to see that step twice then. advworks model. All right. Generate from database. Next. And now I'm going to, suffer through the errors, but that's okay. Server name is going to be advworks.database azure.windows.net. And what this is, Azure database, it's a SQL database out in Azure. So I'm just talking to a database. This could be an on-prem database, could be in SQL Express, really doesn't matter, just a database. I'm going to use SQL authentication for mine, that's how I log in. Select the date, oh, test the connection. Yeah, you always want to do that first before you hit this drop down. There you go, ADV works, and okay. It's going to pop up and say, oh, cool, okay, I figured out how to connect. So do you want to include sensitive data from the connection string in your web config, or do you want to ask the user for it? I'm actually going to put it in the connection string in web config. That's fine for this demo. And then Entity Framework 6 is going to be what I'm going to use next, because I really don't know much about Entity Framework. I'm not Julie Lerman. I don't know the whole thing, but I don't have to, because watch how cool this is. I'm going to go and choose tables, go to tweets. Also, here's the AdventureWorks database. Let's pick up customer and product as well, just to show off, because you're going to think, it couldn't be this easy. Yeah, it really is this easy. Watch. So what this is going to do is go out to the database, generate some entity models for me locally. And then it's going to prompt me and say, you need to build the project first. So I'll build the project. It'll run some text transform templates. Should get 2 pop-ups here. Come on, where's my first one? First one will pop up and say, do you want to run this? Oh, I didn't even get the pop-up, so we'll just say build. So now that I built everything, why did you go through the entity framework stuff, Kirk? Thank you for asking. Good question. Let me right-click the controllers and say add scaffolded item. Scaffolded item allows me to use these different types of templates. I could create a web API controller and hand code everything, but that's kind of 1990. Let's have Visual Studio work for us. So we'll work for it and say the model class is going to be, there's a customer, there's a product, and there's a tweet that we just used in our entity data model. So I'm going to just choose customer, AdventureWorks entities. I'm going to use the new async controller capabilities and add. You didn't see that very quickly, so let me try it one more time. Add new scaffolded item. We'll choose that one, and this time we'll choose product. In case you're taking pictures, add new scaffolded item. Add tweet. Look at how quick it is to generate these things. Isn't that sick? All right, so, sorry, American slang. Isn't that great? Sorry. All right, so now that I generated these, let's look and see what just got generated. Let's go into customers. Alt-Shift-Enter to full screen this guy. It is still an API controller class. I scroll down, I can see that it's actually using Entity Framework, and it has the same simplicity and affordance that we talked about before. There's a get, there's a put, there's a post. Put is to modify an existing, post says create a new one, and then there's also even delete. Cool. All right, so that's pretty cool. Let's hit F5, see if it all works. Go back to Fiddler, and let's get rid of values here, and let's do products and execute. And remember that big scary tree before of all those different HTTP result codes? I'm going to actually kind of walk you through some examples of that and show you the Web API actually takes care of a lot of that for you. So we're going to go here and say, I did HTTP GET, I get a 200 OK. Let's look at the raw view to scare you. Look at all that nice data here. Let's go over to the JSON view. More comfortable. So I can expand and see all the properties. There's a red one, it has a list price here. There's one called Evo Demo Product. Let's pick a different one, number 708, and that's, also Evo Demo. Let me scroll down, find a different one. I haven't killed yet, 712. There you go, number 712. Okay, so composer / affordance. I don't have to read the documentation to figure out how to use this API. 712 gets that same one. Great. I can walk up to this API, easily know how to do it, no weird Microsoft documentation, no legacy of SharePoint full trust code to know how to use these APIs. Pretty cool? All right. Wait, there's more. All right, so why I think this is so cool is because now I can also do things like modify data. So let's go to the composer again. And this time I want to do a post. No, let's do a put. Let's change number 712. To do that, what I need is I need the body of number 712 here. So I'm going to go down here and just grab all this nice little JSON data. And the fact that I just said JSON will be important here in just a moment, because this demo is going to break the first time on purpose. The second time I'll show you why, and we'll fix it. So I'm going to go here and say an HTTP put to products number 712 using this body. And we'll change it to outstanding. Execute. Boom! 415. Oh, would you have thought to do a 415 from your custom API if you were rolling all this by hand? Probably not. Why 415? Well, 415 actually says, we go look at the body, is going to come up and tell you that's an unsupported media type. We're just throwing junk at it, and it said, I don't even know what to do with this. I don't know what kind of data is that. So not everything in the world is JSON right now, but we can tell it this is. Content type is application JSON. So if you've used the SharePoint APIs and you heard about the application JSON, OData equals verbose, this is why you're having to do that, is to tell it that so you don't get the 415s. That's like a medical condition, 415s. So we say 415, oh, look at that, now it's a 204. And 204 says I actually did modify this. So I can go back and look at the 204 and see, says no content. It's okay, but there's no content to tell you back because you just updated something. Pretty cool? So you don't have to know all the inner nastiness, hides a lot of this weird stuff for you. Okay. So now let's go back here and talk about some other neat stuff. Swagger and Swashbuckle. Swashbuckle just makes me sound like a pirate. I don't know why. Every time I hear this, I just think of Captain Morgan or something. Swagger is not a Microsoft technology, yet we're taking a big bet on Swagger. It's an open source technology. Lots of companies use Swagger. It's not just Microsoft. And so Swagger is really a description language. You can see I use kind of that 4th grade notation here. Swagger is to REST API as WSDL is to SOAP. It's a description language. Helps describe what a REST API looks like. It's metadata for a REST API. Okay, that's kind of cool. Web API doesn't have that. You're right. So what we did was we used a NuGet package that's also open source, available on GitHub, and it's called Swashbuckle. Luckily, you don't have to know this either, because if you use that little template that I just did with the API apps, it includes Swashbuckle, which generates Swagger. Isn't that a great phrase? I need a t-shirt that says Swashbuckle generates Swagger. Like, it just, with a pirate on it, I guess, I'm not sure. So it's a NuGet package. You can add this to your web APIs today. So if you can go create an old web API project use the NuGet package, you could add this capability that I'm about to show you. It's pretty cool. Now, I'm sorry I'm going fast, but I realize I've packed this with way too much stuff, so I'm betting on demos for reinforcing, not the slides. So we introduced this thing called Azure App Service that confused everybody. Nobody knew what to make of this. Has everybody heard about this recently? Scott Guthrie did the app service. Everybody's like, they rebranded it. How many times have you heard it's just a rebranding? No, I'm about to show you this is not a rebranding. This is wonderfulness. So web apps, yeah, it's the same old Azure websites that we had before, revamped with a couple new features and built into this app service. Logic apps are brand new, never had these before, and API apps are Azure websites with a set of great new capabilities around them. So these three right now are what encompasses the app service. So for this thing called Logic apps, we have these built-in connectors for Box, Chatter, Dropbox, SharePoint, OneDrive, Office 365 for Exchange. We have lots of these connectors. Think of this as BizTalk in the cloud. That's kind of what this is, lots of microservices. I can have something where I drop something to Dropbox, and then I use Marketo to go back and find into my marketing CRM data, and then I can then take that, any further information, upload that to OneDrive, and then store it in SQL Server. And I can do that by dragging and dropping shapes and hooking stuff together rather than writing lots of manual code. This is wonderful stuff. So with that, Swashbuckle, Swagger, Azure API apps, and Logic apps all in one shot. Here we go. Hold on to your seats. So let's go back here and show you how easy this is. If I scroll up, I told you that that the project template that I chose was really just the old web API template with a couple magic goodies thrown in. So I'll show you the magic goodies. First is this thing called APIapp.json. Great, they added a JSON document in it. How innovative. I'm just kidding. It's more than that. So Alt-Shift-Enter. Why am I... Somebody save me from myself. What did I do here? Oh, we're back. And we're back. All right. One more time. On the recording, this is comedy right now. There we go. So Swagger docs v1. That's the part that I was trying to get to. If we go to that /swagger/docs/v1 that's automatically generated for us, then we're going to see something very interesting. That'll be the description document. There's also another really cool capability for Swagger that you can really control a lot of the capabilities and influence what the documentation looks like without having to write a bunch of code. So back here under app start, there's this Swagger config that's also generated. So let's crack that open real quick. And you're going to see the magic of comments. And I'm not kidding about this. So there's this assembly attribute here. It says pre-application start method. So before the application start is called, it calls this register method in this class. So that's a neat trick. All right, so you don't have to put it in global ASAX. Put an attribute, automatically calls this. In register, then it's going to use that NuGet package, and it's going to then say enable Swagger. And then we have tons of comments. And the first thing you see, the actual implementation is we tell it this is a single API version as a V1, and the name that I chose before is Evo Demo Awesome. And then lots more comments. And lots of other capabilities of things. I can add keys, OAuth, basic auth. I can control the actions. Lots of stuff. So if you don't want to go look at the documentation to see how to use the Swagger Swagger integration, I'm not going to call it API. I'm going to call it integration because you shouldn't have to go to documentation for an API, right? All right, so we're going to scroll down, and you're going to see this one neat trick. You're going to want to show this to all your friends. Go down here and uncomment this and this. That enables this thing called the Swagger UI. So we'll save. Hit F5. This time I'm going to hit F5. Remember last time I get the you are not allowed to list the contents of this directory? Well, that's still there, but now I can just simply type Swagger. Boom. Oh, this is kind of cool. Well, it's not that terribly impressive. If you've seen Web API before, you know that we had documentation before. We had Web API docs. What we didn't really have was an interactive console with it. So that's actually what this is both documentation as well as an interactive console. So I can go back here and see, all right, so the response class here should be a status 200. Here's the model schema of what you should expect back. So you shouldn't have to go looking at somebody's awful documentation web page to go figure out what's returned. And I can tell it what type of content that I want, because remember, we did this in Fiddler by hand before. And then finally, I can even give it parameter values. So I can do like, oh, is this products or customers? Oh, sorry, let's do products real quick, because that's the one that I did. Products ID, and does everybody remember the number that I did before? Was it 712? All right, let's try 712, let's see. Try it out, and boom, there you go, outstanding. Look at that, so we're able to interactively execute our web APIs, test them, and see exactly what, bless you, this is great stuff, stop sneezing at it. This is so what you're looking at is the Swagger UI. Right? Easy to add, just uncomment, one line of code, boom, now I have a great UI. And yes, if you're wondering, you can brand this, you can theme it, you get all that capabilities. Swagger is cool for more than just, though, the documentation, this neat little UI, because I can now go back here, and let's go to the composer, and instead of API, I'm going to type Swagger docs v1. If you remember that URL that I showed you in the JSON document before, and I'm going to make sure that it's a get without this body in it, because that does not make Fiddler happy, and execute. I get a 200 OK, and I go look at it. Oh, this is so fun to show people. I like this. So there's a JSON document, nicely named, and it has definitions in it. And the first definition you'll see is customer. And a customer has the following properties: company name, customer ID, email address. You can see the data types here. You can see that there's an int32, there's a string, there's this. You run around the back, go to the goal. All right, sorry. I was entertaining myself there for a second. So I go down here to customer, there's product, there's tweet, and I can scroll down and see in the paths that there's this API/customers has an HTTP GET method that allows me to return back application JSON, text JSON, application XML, and text XML. I can say that what the responses are. It gives a lot of detail about the web API description. Why is that so cool? Because it's all in JSON. It's kind of hard to use. Well, Visual Studio team did something really, really neat here. Let's go in and right-click and say Add New Project. And we're going to say C# console app. And in this console app, oh, wait. I want to do one thing real quick. Sorry. Ignore the man behind the curtain. We'll go back here to Swagger/docs/v1, and we're going to be prompted this time to save the document. Integration isn't quite where we want it yet, so we're going to say save, and that's going to save as v12.json. So I'm going to open the folder, and then I'm going to shift right click and say copy as path. So I need the full path to the file, and the reason why is because now in my console app I can right click and say add Azure API app client. So we got a new little thing in there with the new Azure SDK that says, okay, do you want to go to one that's already online and available, or do you want to select an existing Swagger metadata file? Well, of course I want that. Paste, okay, and say okay. Now, if you're like me, I always have to go back and look at system.net, HTTP client, web request, how to add the headers, all that stuff. I can never commit that to memory. I don't do it often enough. But watch what it just did. It created a strongly typed client for me that allows me to avoid having to do all that stuff. So I should be able to say evo demo awesome client is equal to new evo demo awesome, and then client dot let's say products dot get product get product. I'm going to pass in the number, I think was 712, and we're going to say back here var ret is equal to that, and then cw tab ret dot name. All right, we'll throw that in there, hit a breakpoint, and debug first, start the web API so it's actually running and somebody's listening for the HTTP calls. And then right click and start the console application. Oh, and get a build error. But that's okay, because I know what it is. This is early tooling, it is a preview. So watch this, build the solution, it'll come up and show me that there's this string collection that wasn't added in by default. I didn't catch that one when I was practicing either. All right, F5, run it so that the web API is listening for HTTP. Go back to the solution, start the console app, start the new instance, and in just 3 lines of code, I'm able to easily call that web API to see that it is truly outstanding. Is that cool? All right. The guys at Redmond are going to be happy to see smiling faces, everybody enthusiastically nodding. On the camera, you probably don't see their faces. They're very happy. All right. So, so let's go back here and show you some more new fun stuff. API apps are also really cool because I can right-click and say publish. And this publish allows me to go back and publish to an Azure API app. And I could choose an existing API app or create a new one. So I'm going to run with scissors. Are y'all ready for this? I'm going to choose new. Evo Demo Awesome. This is going to use my internal consumption subscription. I've got a couple subscriptions I'm working with. My app service plan should be my Evo Demo. Oh, it's working so far. The resource group is Evo Demo. And access level, haha. Available to anyone? I think not. I'm publishing an API publicly in front of an audience. Surely I don't want any of you to be able to call this API. What value is an API that nobody can call? I'll show you, because that's what logic apps are all about. So I'm going to say that it is available only to other APIs in this resource group. That's really cool. So I don't have to worry about all that weird OAuth stuff. If you've read my blog anytime recently, you've seen some really scary OAuth code. This obliterates the need for a lot of that because it's just hidden behind some other stuff that nobody can get to. So he's going to create a new Azure API subscription, and this is going to take a few minutes. We're going to say, okay, this is very much preview stuff that I'm showing. There is a high degree of likelihood that the following will fail. So I'm just going to kind of talk through what it's doing. It's actually creating the website, taking all my code, publishing it to the Azure website, but it does a couple of new things. It creates this new thing called a gateway. And what the gateway allows me to do is this new endpoint that allows me to be able to control the access to the resources inside the resource group. So it's that gateway that's preventing access from outside. I'm not having to do this weird OAuth or any kind of ACLs or any of that stuff. It's this new gateway concept that's added to API apps. So API apps are very similar to the old Azure websites with the added capability of this new gateway concept. So since I have that, in the interest of time, I'm going to pull a Julia Childs. Everybody know what I'm talking about? I'm going to show you the finished one real quick. Okay. So let's open up a browser. New portal. I don't often show the new portal, but we're going to show it right now. Because this is where API apps and logic apps are surfaced. So if I go into my Evo demo, I should be able to see that I've already published a few API apps while I've been practicing for this. Oh, Evo demo awesome is just about provisioned. Is it already done? There's no way. No, he's still going. That's going to take a little while. Still got to open up the gateway. So I'm going to go back and show you another one, my Evo demo API app. And what this allowed me to do was to publish that API definition and then to use this URL, use that URL right there to go to it. Now I can open this thing up and go to settings, application settings, and just like I showed you before, this one's set to public anonymous, but I can go back and change that to internal so it's only available within the resource group. So I'm going to hit save. Only available within the resource group. Okay. So next, what I can do is I can create this thing. Oh, no, I don't want API app. Let go. Let preview. It's a preview. There we go. Let go. There we go. So what I'll do here is I want to add something, a new resource to the group, and this time I'm going to add this new thing called a logic app. Logic apps are fantastic because this is what I was talking about. It's really BizTalk in the cloud where I can connect up these microservices. What we just published is a microservice. So now what I can do is I'll go back here and name this and say awesome Evo demo logic app, making sure that it does not conflict with anything else. And I scroll down and see all this. Yes, create. Right, I'm going to create the logic app. Switch back to Visual Studio. Are we done cooking yet? View details, still, looks like he's done and happy. So we might check that in a moment. In the meantime, you can also watch this lovely progress bar. You know Microsoft is all about progress bars, right? We just never seem to figure out time. You've heard the joke Microsoft second. It's anywhere between now and 100 years. It's how long the progress bar takes. So we're creating the logic app. Oh, look at that. And the time it took me to say that terrible joke, it is finally back. So the logic app is provisioned. So I can go down here and look at my logic apps. And there is my awesome Evo demo. And if I scroll down and look at this awesome Evo demo, I can click Triggers and Actions. And Triggers and Actions, that allows me to use other API apps in this resource group. So, of course, I've practiced this a few times. There's an Evo connector, Evo Demo Awesome, and my Evo Demo API app. So this is the one that we just published a few moments ago. I can also have something that recurs. So we need something to kick off our workflow in the cloud. Again, BizTalk in the cloud. So I can have an HTTP call that comes in, and then it kicks off our process, or I can simply have a timer that runs every once in a while. So let's just set a recurrence to say, once every hour, I want this thing to run. Well, that's intuitive. And now I can, let's say I want to go to Twitter. Oh, not two of them, just one. I want to delete this action, but keep this one right here. I have to authorize the Twitter connector, and it's going to pop up and say, all right, who are you on Twitter? I am K. Evans, and let's password. Where's my password? I'm not going to tell the audience. I think that is it. Yes. All right, good. So then log into Twitter, and it's going to say choose an action, and I want to then search for tweets. So I'm going to search for tweets. And the query is going to be, let's look for Evo conference. That is the hashtag for this conference. And then it's going to give me tweet text, retweet count, and tweeted by as properties. Well, let's take our awesome Evo demo app here. And that went the wrong way. That needs to go over there. How do I do that? Again, we're going to claim this is very much a preview. Oh, okay. You know what? I'm not going to fight the weird UI. We're going to show you the one that's already baked. Because you already saw me dragging and dropping, setting properties, that kind of stuff. So we're going to go back here. I apologize. That's a problem between chair and keyboard, not necessarily with the designer. Go to Triggers and Actions, and here you can see what I've done is I have the recurrence where it goes once every hour, the Twitter connector that goes out and searches, and then finally, I dragged in my connector app. It's going to let go in just a second. My fan just kicked into high gear, so we got some serious JavaScript rolling right now. Serious scripting. Just thinking about it. It's almost done. Come on, I know you're going to let go. There it is. Okay, so then I have my API app, and the action that I chose was to do an HTTP post to my API app. My API then writes to my SQL database. So what I'm doing is going through the list of all of the different tweets of anybody posted about EvoConf, goes to my API and automatically throws them in a database. But wait, there's more, because there's other connectors that we can use. I showed you that pretty slide. So there's one that I can go to SharePoint Online and insert into a list called tweets. So I can easily take, it's a SharePoint conference. I had to show SharePoint in here somehow. So you say Twitter goes into my API and also goes into SharePoint, or I can house, so let's see, call SendGrid to send an email. I can do Twilio, send an SMS, tons of stuff I can do, and it's all drag and drop without having to write code, microservices stitching them together. All right, so that's the idea behind Swashbuckle, Swagger. Swagger allows the properties of my web API to show up in the portal that you just saw a moment ago, which allows me to set the properties and use that API declaratively. So the last thing I want to talk about is API management. Because we build this API, and it's not all just about the logic app. Sometimes we actually want an API that others are going to use. So if we're going to do that, some other things we need to accommodate in our design principles are things like, how do you scale them out, and what's your cloud-based architecture? Well, Azure kind of takes care of that for you really well. What about things like support and monitoring and analytics? Somebody reports an issue. You have to go code all that, or what are you going to do? Give them access to a public SharePoint site? Probably not. Yeah, you don't want to have to write a bunch of code. Turns out we have a lot of this already taken care of for you. And it's through this thing called Azure API Management. So here are the things you have to really very much consider. If you're going to publish a public API that others are going to consume, or even within your own organization, Microsoft has thousands of APIs. Problem is, nobody can find them, and when people find them, they abuse the heck out of them. So how do you provide throttling? Make sure you can only call it once every so often. How do you provide analytics so you can see how often is it being called? API management. So the way it works is between your API, the thing all the way over on the left, and the app developers and users all the way over on the right is this thing in the middle, API management. It is a proxy. It sits between your API calls and the eventual end user. So the end user is actually going to the API management endpoints, which then means your API management server needs to be able to access your actual APIs. May sound kind of weird. Well, great. Does that mean my APIs have to be public? No, because Microsoft's using this extensively internally. We have tons of old SOAP web API, no, not web APIs. We have old SOAP stuff flying around that nobody wants to code against that anymore. We have lots of just proprietary text formats, and what API management allows you to do is not only do throttling, but also transformations and wire format. It can also do things like how frequently you're allowed to call it in a time span or within a few second range. So I can show you those here in just a moment as well. And to give you an idea of, okay, it's a proxy in the middle, does it scale? I just kind of picked one of the SKUs out and showed you the scale capabilities. More than 1 billion API calls per month, 5 gig cache. Oh yeah, here's a cool one. Build an API. Do you also have to go roll your own cache mechanism? Nope, just throw it in here and this will add the caching for you. An SLA with 99.95% with multi-geo, so you take the multi-geo capabilities and scale multiple geographies, you now get much further reach. A quick demo. I like this one too, this is kind of fun. Okay, so I need to go back to my awesome, not the Logic app, I need to show you the API. So API apps. And we're going to go take the one I actually just did, was Evo Demo Awesome. And I should go look at properties of that. Try that trick one more time. There it goes. And this time I have to go look at the properties of it. So where are the properties hiding? This resolution is fun to work with up here. API app, where's my definition? All settings, we'll go to that. There's all settings, woo! Application settings. And I'm gonna change this back to public for just now. And you'll see why in a moment. We're gonna say save. And just to test out that it actually is public. For those in the recording, trust me, I will have deleted this by then. You won't be able to hack my subscription. I'm gonna copy. And you can see now, instead of just getting an error, we're actually getting this API app has been successfully created, and go here to /API/values as a very quick test, and see brokenness. What just happened there? All right, let's try our other little trick. Swagger. Anybody listening? No, nobody's listening. What happened? You are listening. You're killing me, Smalls. All right. Preview again bites me. What's happening before your very eyes is, remember I told you about this new thing called the gateway? That gateway sometimes has a little bit of troubles right now. It's very much a preview technology. It will improve very quickly, especially in the build time frame. For those on the recording, build is in like another week to 2 weeks, so a lot of the troubles that you're seeing with the UI and everything else, they're rapidly making improvements. They wanted to get it in your hands so that you would see this before build, so that you'd be able to enjoy the rest of all the great new announcements as well. So with that, we're going to go back to the old portal, because that's where API management still lives. It hasn't gone to the new modern portal yet. And we'll be able to go over here and scroll down. Scroll down and scroll up, and it's this guy right here, API management. And I've already created one. Creating a new API management service takes about 30 minutes, somewhere around there. Takes a little while, but once you have it, this is really cool because it comes up and it says, open the publisher portal, and then you can do some stuff here. Open the developer portal, you can do some stuff here. So let's first go to the publisher portal and see what we can play with. And it says, go to the dashboard. All right, so we'll do that. We'll go to the dashboard. Oh, wow. All right. When in doubt, Firefox. I'm probably going to get in trouble for that one. Oh, that's not what I tried either. All right. Oh, I know. No. Manage windowsazure.com. Need to log in. I hope that's the resolution that's doing that. So open the publisher's portal. That's a responsive UI right there, isn't it? I can't see a darn thing. Let's try one last time before I might have to go back and say mea culpa. I could show you a video real quick. I think that would lose a little something on it. In case it prompts me, where's my phone? Oh, good, I'm gonna be able to log in. We're gonna go back here to API management, and we're gonna scroll down. We're very close to the big aha because this part's really cool. Where did API management go? There it is. Yeah, that's great. Change subscriptions over to my Microsoft subscription. If you can't tell, this flail was not part of the plan. One more time. We're almost there. Thank you for bearing with me. API management, there it is. Go to the Evo demo. We're going to go to the publisher portal, and this time we're going to be able to see it. All right. So what you would have seen, and we're getting very near time, and that just killed my about 3 minutes. So what you would have seen would have been the ability for me to take that Swagger definition, register it in the API portal. It would have imported all of my definitions without me having to go through the pain of registering all of my APIs. Then I would have been able to assign the API to a product. This is one of the cool things that you can do with API management is that I can actually set up different products. I can have like a free product where I can say, all users can use this, but you're limited to 5 API calls per week. You know, you can say that's your free version. Then you can say standard, and you can say you are allowed. You're less throttled, but you only have access to these resources. And then maybe a premium where you say now you have access to all of this. So it allows you to set the tiers of who could do what, throttle different aspects. You can even set different cache policies per each one of those products, and then have developers sign up for them. So I have to just try the developer portal. I can't, oh, all right, that's just terrible. Oh, it's down there. I should have scrolled down. I apologize, did everybody see that? I'm up here clicking this terrible nav thing up here. It's down here. Oh, that's so embarrassing. All right, so y'all could have called that out. All right, so what you would have seen is API management allows me to register my APIs. Swagger definition will import, and then I'm able to throttle and set different subscription policies. As an end user then, I should have been able to go to this portal, and I would have been able to then log in as a user, subscribe to different APIs, set up some kind of purchasing plan. I would have been able to use the API and then submit an issue on there to say, I'm not quite liking how this API works. Can you fix this? And it would have shown up in my administrative portal. So I'm getting feedback from end users without having to write any code or anything to make all that happen. So one busted demo, so that's okay. The other ones worked well. But what is the API economy? You heard about, there's been an elbow effect since 2011, 2012, and this is widely recognized as the big frontier for cloud computing over the next few years, billions at stake. Building an API, you talked about web API, you learned about Swashbuckle and Swagger and how cool it is, and it's just fun to say to your friends. Azure App Service, you saw why, and you saw a little preview of how cool it is. At Build, lots more stuff. I can't wait for all of you to find out about this. This is so exciting. And then finally, Azure API management. If you build an API that you want others to consume, you need a way to secure it, throttle it, do caching, and to build those tiered policies. API management provides you with that. My name is Kirk Evans. I'm an architect with Microsoft. This slide must be the last slide in your deck in case anybody hasn't seen the slide already. Thank you. Enjoy the last session of the conference. Thank you for coming.